All right, guys, we're going to start by solving equations by factoring today. So we're going to take a little bit what we have been doing the past week and add on to it. So finding solutions to equations means finding xi's that will make the equation 0 and where the graph crosses the x-axis. So we're trying to find x-intercepts. We're going to solve each equation by factoring. The first step we need to do is make sure the equation is set equal to 0. If it's not set equal to 0, we need to make it set equal to 0. So 2, we're going to factor the expression. So like what we did earlier in the week, taking that trinomial and turning it into 2 binomials. In step 3, we're going to set each factor that we get. So we're going to set those binomials equal to 0 and solve them individually. So then you'll be able to see on the graph, if you had a graph, these 2 points right here are what we're looking for. Okay, so for example number 1, we're looking for 2 numbers that multiply, that multiply to give us negative 50, but add to give us 5. So those 2 numbers are going to be 10 and 5. It's a negative 50, but a positive 5. So our bigger number, 10, is going to be positive, and our smaller number, 5, is going to be negative. So 10 times negative 5 gives us negative 50. 10 minus 5 also gives us 5. So now that we made sure the equation was set equal to 0. We factored the expression. Now we're going to set each factor. Okay, so x plus 10 equal to 0 and x minus 5 equal to 0. Now what we're going to do with each one of these is solve for x. So x plus 10 equals 0. To solve for x, all I need to do is subtract 10 from both sides. 10 minus 10, 0. Okay. And then I carry down my x, and 0 minus 10 gives me a negative 10. So that is 1 x-intercept. Now we're going to do the same thing over here. Add 5 to both sides. X equals 5. Cancels out right there. Okay, so your x-intercepts are negative 10 and 5. That means for this one, it's going to cross on the graph at negative 10 and 5. So we know it's going to look something like this. Okay. All right, moving on to example 2. X squared minus 6x plus 8 equals 0. So it's already set equal to 0. Now we're going to find 2 numbers that multiply to give us 8, but add to give us negative 6. That is going to be negative 4 and a negative 2. So negative 4 times negative 2 gives us positive 8. Negative 4 minus 2 gives us a negative 6. Now we're going to set each one of these factors equal to 0 and solve each one. So for this first one, we're going to add 4 to both sides to get x by itself. This side, we're going to add 2 to both sides to get x by itself. So x equals 4 and x will equal 2. Okay? If you want to make it a little simpler on yourself, you're just going to look at these binomials, and whatever the number is, it's just going to be the opposite sign. So because this is a negative 4, our x-intercept is going to be positive 4, and because it's a negative 2, our x-intercept is going to be 2. Okay, so our x-intercepts for example 2 are x equals 4 and x equals 2. Moving on to number 3. It is not set equal to 0, so the first thing we need to do is get it equal to 0. So 2x squared minus 3x minus 12 equals 8. So we're going to need to subtract this 8 to move it to the other side. Make sure you're combining like terms. So if this had an x with it, we'd have to put it with the x. If it had an x squared, we'd have to put it with x squared. No variables, so it's going with our c value. This cancels out right here. 8 minus 8 is 0. And then it will be 2x squared minus 3x Negative 12 minus 8 will give us a negative 20 equals 0. So now what we're going to need to do for this one, if you see that a is greater than 1, so we have a number with our x squared, we're going to need to use our slide and divide method. So 2 times negative 20 gives us negative 40. And two numbers that multiply to give us negative 40, but add to give us a negative 3. That is going to be 8 and 5. So x minus 8 and x plus 5. Now, after we did our sliding, we're going to have to do our dividing by 2. So divide by 2, divide by 2. 8 divided by 2 is going to give me 4. 5 divided by 2 I can't do, so I'm going to slide it in front. So x minus 4 now, and 2x plus 5. Now I'm going to need to set each of these factors equal to 0 and solve. So x minus 4, again, it's always opposite of what the number is, so it's negative 4, so we're going to have to add it over to give us a positive 4. So there's one of your factors. Now we need to do 2x plus 5 equal to 0 and solve for x. The first step we're going to do is subtract 5 from both sides. Cancels out on that side. I get 2x equals negative 5, divide by 2. These 2's cancel out. I get x equals negative 5 halves. Okay. I know the fraction one's a little bit trickier, but again, if you just look at back to where you had a fraction here, so the 5 halves, just make it a negative, and it's a negative 5 halves. Okay, so your two x-intercepts on that one are x equals 4 and x equals negative 5 halves. All right, number 4. First step, set it equal to 0, so I'm going to have to move this 5 to the other side by subtracting it, always doing the opposite of what happens. So I get 6x squared minus 7x. There's no c over here, so I'm just going to put it at the end. Equals 0, cancels out there. Now, again, I'm going to have to do our slide and divide method. So 6 times negative 5 gives me negative 30. Two numbers that multiply to give me negative 30, but add to give me a negative 7 are going to be 10 and 3. So it will be, sorry, I had a brain fart for a second. It will be x minus 10, because our number in the middle is a negative 7, so our bigger number needs to be negative, and x plus 3. Negative 10 plus 3 gives us a negative 30. Negative 10 plus 3 gives us a negative 7. Now I can't forget to divide by my a value, so divide by 6. Divide by 6. I need to reduce both of my fractions, so x minus 5/3 and x plus 3 divided by 6 reduces to 1/2. Then I'm going to have to slide these bottom fractions in front, so it becomes, move it up here, 3x minus 5 and 2x plus 1. Okay, setting them both equal to 0. 3x minus 5 equals 0. Solve for it. Plus 5 on both sides. Cancels out. 3x equals 5. Divide by 3. Cancels out over here. X equals 5/3. 2x plus 1 now. Subtract 1 from both sides. Cancels out there. I get 2x equals negative 1. Okay, divide by 2. X equals negative 1/2. So x equals negative 1/2 and x equals 5/3 are our two answers. Remember, if you go back to our factored forms before we slid the numbers in the front, we just needed to change the sign to the fractions here. So positive 5/3 right there, and a negative 1/2 is right there. All right, moving on. Example number 5. If you notice, we have x squared minus 25 equals 0. There is no b value, so we should check and see if these are perfect squares. So x squared, we can do the square root of that to give us x. And negative 25, made sure we had that negative sign. 25 is a perfect square of 5, so that means our a value is going to be x, and our b value is going to be 5. You have to do a plus b, so x plus 5, and x minus 5. Setting those both equal to 0 to solve. Subtracting 5 over here, cancels out. Adding 5 here. X equals negative 5 and x equals positive 5. There's your final answer for that one. All right, same thing here. I have no b value, so I need to check and make sure everything in here is a perfect square because I do have a minus sign in the middle. 9 is a perfect square of 3. Square root of x squared is x. 25 is a perfect square of 5. So we're going to make it a plus b, so 3x plus 5, and a minus b, 3x minus 5. Now setting both of these equal to 0, 3x plus 5 equals 0, and 3x minus 5 equals 0. Subtract 5, you get negative 5 equals 3x, divide by 3, cancels out over here. X is going to equal negative 5/3 for that one. Add 5 here, cancels out. 3x equals 5, divide by 3. X equals a positive 5/3. And there's your final answer. All right, just 2 more here, guys. Example number 7, the first thing we're going to have to do because a is greater than 1 is check for greatest common factor. Our greatest common factor in this is going to be 4. And if I divide all these numbers by 4, I would have 2x squared minus 7x minus 15 equals 0. Okay, so now we're just going to have to remember to carry this 4 down. Because a is still greater than 1, I'm going to need to do slide and divide. So 2 times negative 15 gives me a negative 30. 2 numbers that multiply to give me negative 30, but add to give me a negative 7. Using the same numbers as we did before, x minus 10 and x plus 3. Dividing by our a value here now. Divide by 2, divide by 2. 10 divided by 2 can reduce to x minus 5. Carrying that 4 down still. X plus 3 divided by 2. Gonna slide that 2 in front so it becomes 2x plus 3. Now I need to set both of these factors equal to 0. So x minus 5 equals 0. 2x plus 3 equals 0. And solve them both. Add 5 to this one. And I get x equals 5. Subtract 3 on both sides on this one. I get 2x equals negative 3, and then divide by 2. X equals negative 3/2. Here's your answer for number 7. All right, for number 8, I have no c value, but it's still set equal to 0. So I'm going to check for our greatest common factor. What they both have in common is an x, so I'm going to factor out an x to leave me with x plus 7. Now I can't factor any more out here, okay? So every time you see an x, you're going to have to set it equal to 0. So I have this x out here, okay? And I need to set that equal to 0 so I can solve that for x. But it's already solved for x, so that would be one of my answers. I didn't have to do it with number 7 here because the 4 in the front didn't have an x with it. You only have to do it if there is an x with it. All right, back to number 8. I need to take my x plus 7, set it equal to 0, and solve for x. Subtract 7 on both sides. I get x equals negative 7. Here's my 2 answers. And that is how you solve equations by factoring. Have a good day, guys.